Hi, I'm Mary Jane Toth. I want to thank you for joining us today as we work through another recipe from my book, A Cheesemaker's Journey. Hello everyone, and welcome to my kitchen. I'm Mary Jane Toth, author of A Cheesemaker's Journey. Today I would like to show you how to make cottage cheese. This will be the large curd variety. It's very easy to make. In fact, in my book, on a scale of 1 to 5, where I've rated the cheeses from easy to hard, this is a number 2. Let's go through the equipment and the ingredients that you'll need today to make the large curd cottage cheese. This is a cheese vat that I have here. One pot fits inside of the other. Basically what this is a double boiler type system that allows me to heat the milk and bring it up to a high temperature without worrying about scorching it on the bottom. If you have other pans at home, you can kind of makeshift this sort of a system, but this really is a nice cheese vat and it helps to hold the temperature evenly. You will also need an additional pot that you can fill with cool water to rinse our curds so that we have a nice smooth curd and that it tastes really delicious and gets rid of some of the acidity. Also a colander. Then you're going to need a 3-quart or 2-quart bowl that you can use to mix the curds into when we want to salt and cream them. You're going to need a curd knife. This is a nice long knife that fits into the bottom of the pot. Any knife will work as long as it can reach the bottom of the pot. This is a skimmer or a stirrer, and we use this to bring the curds up from the bottom of the pot so that we can cut them and make sure that they're evenly cooked. We next like to use a nice cheese making thermometer. This one goes all the way from 40 to 220, and it has this nice little clip on the side that you can use to hang on the side of the pot and monitor the temperature. You'll also need some measuring spoons and a couple of measuring cups. I have a 1/4 cup size and a 1 cup size. And then you need to get some cheesecloth. This is the cheesecloth that I get from Hager Supply. It's beautiful stuff. You can see how nice and thin it is and how good the whey can drain through it. This is reusable. You can bleach it, wash it, and use it over and over many times. Do not buy cheesecloth in the grocery store or the hard goods store. That is not cheese making cheesecloth, and it will not work for making cheese. It has such big holes in it, your cheese will drain right through. That's only the type of cloth that people use when they're varnishing furniture for cleaning off the dust and so forth. Now let's go through the ingredients. We are using a cultured buttermilk that we made ourselves. We are also going to be using a cheese salt. This is a real fine grade salt that dissolves very easily. And if you don't have cheese making salt, you can also use any non-iodized salt. I'm using liquid rennet today. You can use tablet rennet. I prefer the liquid because it dissolves better in water. It's much easier to mix up and can be measured more accurately. If you are using store-bought milk, and this only applies to store-bought milk, you will need to add calcium chloride so that you get a much firmer set. If you have your own dairy animals, you have much better luck with a firmer set and you don't have to worry about that. I'm also using some heavy cream. If you like your cottage cheese to be drier, you don't need to use the cream. That's optional, but my family likes the cream cottage cheese the best, so that's what I'm using today. Now when it comes to your milk, if you have your own dairy animals, that's great. You can use cow milk, goat milk, sheep milk. This just happens to be from the local grocery store, so we will be adding the calcium chloride to this today. Now that we've filled our pot with 1 gallon of whole milk, we're going to be hanging the thermometer on the side so that we can monitor the temperature. We need to bring it up to 86 degrees. Now that our milk has reached 86 degrees, I need to get some cool water. I'm using well water today because we live in the country and we don't have city water and it's not chlorinated. If you live in an area where you have chlorinated water, which is what most city municipalities have, then you'll need to make sure you use bottled water. The reason for that is because chlorine will interfere with our culture. Okay, we are going to need to add calcium chloride. That's going to help us give a nice firm set because we're using store-bought milk today. Oh, excuse me, I almost messed up. We need a 1/2 teaspoon. That was a teaspoon measure. So we need a 1/2 teaspoon of calcium chloride, and this is going to be mixed with cool water before we add it to our milk. So we're going to give this a good stir in. Okay, now we're going to add some cultured buttermilk. I did this a couple of days ago. It's my own homemade, really creamy, and I used whole milk for this too. So you're going to see some of my own homemade buttermilk going into my own homemade cheese. So we need 1 cup of this. Let's get that stirred in real good first too before I put in the coagulating agent. Beautiful. Now we're ready to put in our coagulating rennet. And we need 1/2 teaspoon of this. And again, in 1/4 cup of cool water. So I'm going to add the water first because then I can just dump this right in. And give it a real quick stir. And then be sure that you're stirring the milk the whole time that you're adding this into it. You don't want it to get thick in one spot before you have it thoroughly stirred. You want to stir it for maybe 20-30 seconds, not very long. And then once you get it stirred, thoroughly mixed, stop the stirring and don't go back to stirring it until it's actually sat for 1 hour. So we're going to put a lid on this pot and keep the temperature at 86 degrees for 1 whole hour, and then we'll come back and heat treat the curds. Our curds have now been incubating for 1 hour and they're ready to cut. So let's go ahead and cut the curds. We're going to start in the middle, cutting the curds one direction and work our way towards the outside. We need to cut these into 1/2-inch cubes. The reason we start in the middle is because as the whey starts to float around the curds have a tendency to kind of slide around like they're floating in a swimming pool, and then they're much harder to cut in even sizes. Now, if you can't cut them exactly in even sizes, don't fret about it because we'll get our chance to break them up later as we're working the curds. So once we've done it in one direction, we come back, start in the middle on the other side, and do the same thing we did to the first side. You don't have to get real fanatical about cutting these all into exactly the same size pieces. And then we're going to do a couple of sideways cuts like this just to make sure we have them cut a little bit since they're in long noodles at this point. And now we're going to slowly bring our curds up to 110 degrees. So let's hang a thermometer on the side so that we can monitor that. I already have a pot of hot water sitting over here in my cheese vat ready to slide my curds into it. So let's go ahead and do that. And we're going to hold them in this vat, stirring about every 10 minutes for 30 minutes. And be sure that you stir them slowly, as if you stir them too quickly, you could end up with a tough curd. Now that our curds have been sitting at 110 degrees for 30 minutes, and we've been stirring them every 10 minutes, they're really ready for us to go ahead and drain. Let me show you that they do indeed look like cottage cheese. So let's go ahead and take them over to the sink, where I have prepared a cloth-lined colander, and we're going to drain them in the sink. These need to be drained once we get it poured into here for 20 minutes. If you see any left of the pot like this, just go ahead and use your hand and scoop them out, and that'll be just fine. Now I'm going to pull up the bag of curds because I want to get more of the whey off quickly, and then I'm going to set them down and let them drain for 20 minutes. But you can see that clear liquid draining off in our bags, holding the curds very nicely. Okay, let's set them down, and we're going to let them drain for 20 minutes. Our curds have been draining now for 20 minutes. If you'd like to come and take a look at them, they're just beautiful. This is absolutely wonderful looking cottage cheese. But now they're still a little bit warm, so we need to dip them in cold water so that we can stop the cooking process. So you need to gather up the cheesecloth. And I already have a pot of cold water sitting here that I've drawn earlier. And we need to drain this whey off because this will allow, if we don't take this off, our curds will be more sour. And this is going to leave us with a real sweet cream cottage cheese. So we're going to dip them up and down in the cold water, and this is going to stop that cooking process and cool them off rather quickly. And then once you've dipped them up and down a few times, I kind of put my hand into there and work them up a little bit because I want that cold water to reach all those curds. Dip them up and down 3, 4, 5 times. And then once you've done that, you feel that comfortable that they're all nice and cool. We're going to pull them back up out of the water. You can already see that the water's pretty clear. There's not a lot of milky stuff coming into it, so that's great. And then we're going to put them back into our colander, and we're just going to let them drain here until the curds stop dripping. And then when we come back, we're going to make creamed cottage cheese. Now that our curds have already drained and stopped dripping, we're ready to make creamed cottage cheese. So let's bring them over here to my workstation. Do you see these beautiful curds, everybody? I mean, they're absolutely gorgeous. Does this not look like great cottage cheese? You know, my Hungarian father-in-law used to talk about dry cottage cheese that they made different pastries with all the time. And this was the style of cottage cheese he was talking about. But for regular eating, I love creamed cottage cheese. And so to make creamed cottage cheese, we need to put the curds into a bowl and work some salt into them for flavor and some cream to make beautiful creamed cottage cheese. So let's just go ahead and dump those curds into the bowl. And as you can see, beautiful, huh? Let's add a teaspoon of salt to it, and making sure that you have the non-iodized. This is the regular cheese salt that we had showed you earlier. It looks like I have about 1.5 pounds of cottage cheese here, so I'm actually going to add another 1/2 teaspoon. You want to use about 1 teaspoon per pound, so you can kind of guess by looking at this. This looks like about 3 cups of cottage cheese. So let's just add another 1/2 bit of salt because I think that's what it's going to need. And then we're going to add some cream. I'm just going to use the large measuring spoon here to help me stir them up. You don't want to add too much cream, maybe 2 or 3 tablespoons, because you don't want them to be soupy. You just want them to be nice and creamy and have a good flavor. You can stir them up first, kind of get a good look at them and see do they look really like what you want them to be first. And if you see any larger curds, go ahead and break them up with your spoon or your fingers so that you have a nice even distribution of this cream. I think they need a little bit more cream. They still look a little bit on the dry side to me, and I'd like them to be just a little bit creamier. So I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit more cream over the top. Cream is good anyway, isn't it? Makes everything taste delicious. Okay, that's looking much, much better for me. Smells good too. Isn't this just the most beautiful creamed cottage cheese you've ever seen? Looks absolutely delicious. It looks good and creamy. Perfect. Now let's give it a taste and see if we like it. See if it's salted and creamy enough for me. Fingers were invented before spoons, so I'm just going to pick up a piece with my fingers and pop it in my mouth and see how delicious this really is. Rich, creamy, delicious. I could eat this cottage cheese all day long. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Hi, I'm Mary Jane Toth, author of A Cheesemaker's Journey, and I'd like to tell you about something exciting that's happening at HagerFarmYard.com. I'd like to invite you to become part of our online cheese making community. You're going to find helpful articles, recipes, and videos, and even a forum on there where you can post cheese making questions. I'm very excited to be part of this adventure, and I look forward to helping you be successful in your own cheese making journey.